Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you all for finding time and visiting today's webinar about strategy for writing an international competitive grant. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Elida. I'm from Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga, and I'll be responsible for moderating the webinar today. This webinar is part of the webinar series organized by the Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga. And I'm very glad to welcome you all. And I'm very happy that we have our speakers here. We have Professor Taiful Mahmud, Dr. Amir Ali Popet, and Professor Badri Munir Sukocho. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. Today's webinar has the following agenda. First, we will hear a national anthem of Indonesia, the Indonesia Raya song. And then for the opening session, the Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga, Professor Junaidi Khotib, will deliver his speech, as well as opening this event. The next session, we will hear presentations from all the three speakers, respectively, who will share their expert opinion about strategies in writing an international competitive grant, with the time allocation for each speaker is around half an hour. The last session, we will have a discussion and answering questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, you may send in your questions at any time during the presentations in the Q&A panel that you can see in the bottom of your screens, and we will collect the questions and address them at the end of all the presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the first agenda, the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the next agenda. It's opening remarks by the Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga, Professor Junaidi Khotib. Prof. Jun, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jairina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, good evening for our college in United States. Firstly, let us praise the presence of God that we can be here for welcoming and joining together with honorable speakers at the virtual event of the webinar series number 13 that organized by Faculty of Pharmacy, Airlangga University. Secondly, I would like to convey my highest respect and appreciation to my colleagues who have agreed to be speaker in this important moment. I hope this will continue to the another moments. They are, the first speaker is Professor Taifu Mahmud from Faculty of Pharmacy, Oregon State University, USA. Then second part is Dr. Amirali Popat from School of Pharmacy, the University of Queensland, Australia. And the webinar will be ended by last speaker, Professor Badri Munir Sukocho. He is a director of postgraduate school Airlangga University. The third, I also distribute my gratitude to the Deputy Dean and Scientific Committee who have worked so hard and well prepared for this event. Then I would like to thank all the participants for joining in this virtual seminar with the Zoom and YouTube platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, on this auspicious occasion, we focus on how to properly obtain research grant. We realize that competing for research grant, both national and international, is very complex and not easy. But we believe that there offer hopes and opportunities through brilliant and innovative ideas. And the last part should be cleverly brightened. Therefore, current themes that are shared and discussed, strategy for writing an international competitive grant was chosen to prove a solution to these problems. To increase the likelihood of funding success, scientists suggest doing an extensive search of available grants, and nothing differences in the types of the project financed by various funding bodies. Government agencies tend to be interested in the basic science and address big and conceptual questions. They will prove the nation problem. There are different with a private foundation. However, my prioritized project that inform social changes or that have practical implication that fit into the one of its specific dimensions. Grant writing is a job, a requirement for research scientists who need to find projects year after year. Most proposal end in rejection, but misstep give researcher a chance to learn how to find others opportunities, write better proposal, and navigate the system. Taking time to learn from the setback and successes of the others can help to increase the chance of securing funding. Ladies and gentlemen, today almost 1,000 registered webinar participants with a distribution for more than 25 countries together with us today. Let's send greeting to our colleagues in Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cambodia, China, Egypt, Ghana, Hungary, India, Iraq, Kenya, Lebanon, Malaysia, Maldives, Morocco, Nigeria, Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and last but not least, Indonesia. To all participants, I hope can take all of the part of this course well, and the sharing of experiences by experts will result in the brief access to international competitive grants acceptance. Finally, with the Bismillahirrahmanirrahim webinar series 13 that held by Faculty of Pharmacy, Airlangga University with tema strategy for writing an international competitiveness, a competitive grant is officially open. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Junaidi. Ladies and gentlemen, the webinar strategy for writing an international competitive grant is formally open. First, I would like to give a few reminders to those who just joined this webinar. Participant is entitled to an electronic certificate of participation after completing the requirements below. Participants attended, you can fill the attendance form through Zoom or YouTube. And then the following links is for you who wants to fill in the registration or the attendance list. And then we have the post-test link that will be announced at the end of this webinar. And those who already registered, you can also access through the YouTube link that will be accessible by the public audience. If you have any questions, please address through the Q&A panel chat box and write your names and the speaker's name and also the questions. And before we start, I would like to kindly ask all the participants to turn off their video camera except for the panelists and the moderator, so this webinar can run smoothly. Okay, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Taiful Mahmud, a special guest from the United States. Dr. Taiful Mahmud is a professor in the College of Pharmacy and a young professor in the Department of Chemistry at Oregon State University. He is also a co-founder and vice president of the Gadusal Laboratories and managing director of International Indonesian Scholars Association for the United States and Canada. His CV prior to coming to Oregon State University in 2003, Dr. Mahmud had various experience as a postdoctoral research associate and the assistant professor at the University of Washington. He received his PhD and Master of Science from Osaka University and his professional pharmacy apothecary and bachelor degree from the University of North Sumatra. His group employs a multidisciplinary approach that utilizes cutting-edge technology in molecular genetics, entomology, and chemistry to produce novel pharmaceuticals. He has published more than 98 peer-reviewed articles, 3 book chapters, and 9 patent applications. He has trained many postdoctoral scholars and graduate students. His research programs has been funded by various federal agencies, such as National Institute of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as foundation and pharmaceutical companies. And today, Professor Mahmud will be sharing with us his expert opinion on writing a good research proposal for international grant. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Professor Taiful and help in welcoming him to deliver his presentation. Professor Taiful, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Elida Zairini, for the kind introduction. I would like to thank the organizer and also Professor Junaidi Khatib for inviting me to join this webinar and share my experience in terms of writing grant proposal. And I was asked to talk about how to write a good international grant proposal. But I think just being able to write a good grant proposal is not enough, because if you don't get the funding, then you still don't get the funding, right? So if I can share my slide now. So I call it how to write or writing winning international grant proposal. So that's okay. Let's move on. Well, anyway, so of course, as Professor Junaidi mentioned just now, writing a grant proposal is very important. It's part of our job, actually, who are working in academia or even in research institution to get money to fund our research. And it is a really important task and very difficult actually to get a good grant or big grant to support our research. And in the United States, if you choose to go to academia, and perhaps you start from the level of assistant professor, and you have about 5 years probation time, and if you are not able to achieve or to obtain big grant funding during that time, presumably you will not be able to get promoted and get tenure. So then you have to leave the institution. So this is a big deal everywhere. And of course, for scientists in Indonesia or in other places, to get an international grant should be a little, also challenging. So I hope today, within 25, 30 minutes, I'm able to give you some perspective and also some insight of how to write winning international grant proposal. Of course, as you know, there are many different kind of grant or funding opportunities, and different field, they are slightly different. So there are a lot of variation that you have to consider. And then of course, I won't be able to tell you very specific about your particular field, but in general, all successful grant proposal. Why doesn't move? Right, have 3 keys to success. Right, the first one. The first one is to have a fundable idea. So ideas, of course, everybody understand, oh yeah, I have to have an idea, but you need to have a fundable ideas. And many people think they have very good idea, but it's not always the case. Sometimes, and think about this, whatever idea you have at this point, perhaps maybe 20 or 100 other peoples in the world would have the same idea. And then sometimes if because of the lack of information or knowledge, sometimes you think you have a good idea, but maybe it's not a good idea anymore, or somebody else already tried it and you don't, and nothing really happened. That's one thing that is very important. The second is to have a commitment to the process. So I know everybody is busy, and if you really want to write a successful grant proposal, then you have to commit, a lot of time to the process. I will talk about that later. And then, of course, the third one is to have good grantsmanship skill. So if you have all these 3 components, presumably you will be able to write a good or even a winning grant proposal. Now, how to develop an irresistible and fundable idea, I mean. So first of all, you need to be very knowledgeable about what you are proposing. You need to know actually what are known, and you have to be able to identify gaps or needs, right? I mean, a lot of time when people propose something or they think they have a good idea, but then actually they haven't really done their homework, they haven't really checked in the literature what have been done. And that also applies to grant paper as well. So many times my colleagues, from Indonesia, for example, ask me to help with, writing a manuscript or paper for publication in international journal. But the problem is sometimes the topic, the study that being done is not really novel, and somebody else has done, have investigated the same topic. So that's become a problem to be able to publish it internationally. So to be able to come up with a good idea or fundamental idea, then you really need to do homework. You need to study a lot and read a lot of publication, and then be innovative, or to be able to think about something really new, and well, to come up with novel ideas, and then be open and adaptable. Be open means you don't want to keep your idea to yourself. You want to talk about the idea with your colleagues, talk about your idea with other people that you trust can help you, and you will be amazed that the thing that you thought very great, and then people will tell you, well, sorry, that has been done, or well, that's not very good idea, and so on. So you don't waste your time writing grand proposal and then end up get trashed or get will not get funded. And adaptable means that you are, you try to be open-minded and accept other people's opinion. So then you are ready to change your idea or modify it or make it better. So that way, presumably, you will come up with a more fundable idea. And then the second thing that I mentioned is commitment to the process. Right, that's one thing, is to keep current on the literature. So many people, they get too busy, they don't read papers, or reading sometimes is boring, and then they don't follow the development or the the more recent discovery in the field. So one of the problem, of course, people tend not to keep their own niche. So they try to apply to different agency, different projects. They are even not in their expertise. So in that way, you will have a problem there. So you have to keep current on the literature. And then the second thing, this commitment really to read carefully the funding opportunity announcement and instruction. Many grant application get rejected because they just don't follow the instruction. For example, if you have a page limit of 6, then you don't want even to over for with one sentence after that. So that will be rejected. And then the third one is making time. Make the time to write a competitive application. So as I mentioned just now, in the US, this is a big thing, the big deal. And some faculty members, they really spend several months working on a grant proposal and keep working on that. And in our case, some school, some university in the United States, we have a term base, or not a semester base. So term based, basically you have 3 terms. So some faculty members, we have 1 term off. You don't have to teach nothing. We just spend our time to think and write a grant proposal. And then, as I mentioned just now, you need to seek opinions or critical reviews from colleagues. Because if you don't want to seek opinions, and you just, well, I understand, from my talking with many people, especially in Indonesia, people are afraid that their idea is going to be stolen by somebody else if they talk about it. And so that's, of course, you have to find somebody that you trust to talk about your ideas and ask for opinions. Then you can write a grant proposal and then ask your colleague to read it and provide critical review. So that's come to be open-minded. If you get some criticism, then you have to respond positively, right? And then you need to do whatever necessary. Sometimes it's quite inconvenient if we, you didn't think about it and somebody asks you, how about this? Maybe you should get letter of support from somebody. It's kind of hurtful. So in that case, you have no choice. You have to try to make the proposal more competitive. And then the third one is grantsmanship skill. So having a good idea alone is not enough, right? So first, you need to know how to write good grants. And first of all, of course, you need to know how to fill out the application form correctly. Many people assume that's something very easy, right? You can just fill out whatever the form asks you to do. That's not as simple. Again, coming back to the first, the commitment just now, you need to really read the instruction very carefully and then appropriately fill out the form. And sometimes you need, people, well, I have seen this application from many different people and many different countries also, because I was invited to review grant application, from Saudis and from China and so on. So I know, and then of course from Indonesia, and there are a lot of thing, look at the grant application, then you feel like, okay, this can be improved dramatically if you know how to fill out the application correctly. And then you also need to understand the purpose of grant application, because you're asking money, right? You're asking money from other people to give you, to do your research. And why would I give you money, right, for free? And so grant application really a medium for you to convey your plans, and then you need to convince me that the money that I give you really worth it. Okay. And also keep in mind that grant application are reviewed by people. So psychologically, so about application form, there's more mechanics, right? And then understanding the purpose of grant application, that's kind of more a concept. But knowing or keep in mind that grant application are reviewed by people, that's kind of the psychology of that. You should know, when people review grants, what they think about the grant. So you need to sell your idea to those people, and most of the time those people are your peers, meaning people who are in the same field, right? And by knowing that, you need to understand, they are not common people, or they are not lay people. They know very well the field. So you need to be ready, and you need to make a good argumentation so that they feel like, okay, your grant proposal is is good enough to be funded. And then also you need to understand that your idea must be understandable to be successful. Some people, they think, they write a nice, grant proposal already, but sometimes the idea is not being conveyed correctly. So that's the reason why it is very important to show your grant proposal to a colleague or to several people, and ask for their opinions. If they complain or they give you criticism, then you need to accept. That means you are not doing a good job in terms of conveying your ideas. And then, of course, make sure that there are no errors in your grant. So this is a common problem that I see from from scientists from abroad. Well, part of that because sometimes English is not their first language, but you can ask colleagues, your colleagues, to proofread or seek out help from a person who is fluent in English, and make sure that there is no typos. There are no typos, because we are, reviewers are humans. When we see a lot of typos, and then we end up looking for mistakes all the time. So we are not paying attention anymore to your ideas or your proposal, but rather looking for any other typos in your proposal. That's really destructive, and of course you don't want that to happen. And then of course that also show that you are not very careful person. How should I why should I give you money to do research? If I feel like you are not a careful person. And then the most important thing, of course, you need to tell your objectives, specific aims, or overview section. So I'm talking about the section of grant proposal. Again, depending on the mechanism, depending on the funding agency, the form could be different. But in general, you have a page or two that you can write your objectives or specific aims or overview section. So this is the most important section of a proposal. Typically, this is come first, right? The first 1 or 2 pages. If I read a grant proposal, at the beginning, the first page, I'm not impressed, then you can imagine, I'm not interested in reading the rest of it. And even if I have to read the rest of it, then typically I'm trying to find mistakes or find negative aspect of the proposal that I can reject it, because I have many other proposals that may be better that I want to support. So that's the reason why the most important section of the proposal is the first page. And that's include introductory paragraphs. So you need to add an opening sentence there, put an opening sentence, and then you have to frame the problem, right? Framing the problem is very important. And then you have to tell a little bit of current knowledge, and then what's the gaps or lacking, aspect of the field or of the topic. And then you mention a statement of need. For example, and then the consequence of not meeting the needs. For example, right now, we have COVID-19 problem, and then what do we need? Well, we need, of course, vaccine. We need antiviral agent specific for COVID-19 treatment, right? That's the statement of needs. And then you should mention the consequence of not meeting needs. So if we don't have vaccine, or if you don't have drug, then maybe millions of people will die. So that kind of very convincing introductory paragraph is important. And then of course, depending on what you propose, you have to describe your central hypothesis and the rationale, why you want to, pursue one way or the other. And then so you need to tell the short term and long-term goal of your. Of the common reason for application not being funded is that, first, problem to be studied is not clearly stated, and then also lack of strong hypothesis or rationale for the projects. So that's something you need to think very carefully. Of course, you need to read a lot of literature to be able to do that correctly. And then, of course, the third section is specific aim section or objective section. You need to list 2 to 4 specific aim, specifically what you want to do, right? And then you have to be very careful in writing specific aims because many proposals, they have interdependence of aims or goal. Meaning, if you have like 4 specific aim or 3 specific aim, then you propose M1 to do such and such, right? But then M2 is a continuation of M1, meaning if M1 is not successful, you cannot do M2 and you cannot do M3. That's a bad proposal. You don't want to have interdependence of aims in your proposal, because if I give you money, if M1 is not successful, then the whole thing is completely failed. So but the good proposal is that you have several aims. They are independent, and they even perhaps are necessary to support each other. So that would be a good proposal, or good specific aim section. And then the fourth one is expected outcome or positive impact statement. So you have to reassure the reviewers that if funded, something very significant will come out from your study, okay? The outcome should be consistent with the overall objective. So what are your objectives originally, or what is your objective? And then after you do the research, the aims that you propose, and then the outcomes should be consistent with the objectives, right? And then another part of grant proposal, usually there is a significant section. Of course, not every grant proposal asks or writes significance, but more or less it's about why this proposal is important, or why the proposed research or the work that you propose are important. And then significant is score highly, right? So if you, well, in my case, I review a lot of grant proposal for NIH, the National Institute of Health of the United States. So there are 5 criteria of review. The first one is significance, and the second one is investigator, and the third one is innovation, the fourth one is approach, and the fifth one is the environment. So we'll talk about those later. So significant is number 1. And then every section you have to score them. The score is from 1 to 9. 1 means very good or outstanding. 9 is really bad, right? And then you can score different section differently, but the overall score should not be smaller than the significant score, meaning the significant score is the baseline, okay? And then, of course, the question is, what are the intellectual merit and the broader impact of your study? What does the problem in the field that the proposed project address, right? And does the project improve scientific knowledge and technical capability in the field? And then will concept, method, and technologies that drive the field be changed if the proposed aims are achieved? Of course, this all question depending on what you are proposing, right? You may not be able to meet all those questions, but at least you need to be able to address some of those questions. And are there strong scientific premise or rigor in prior research? So scientific premise is an odd term that NIH used originally, but now they changed that to rigor in prior research. Because when you propose something, you come up with hypotheses, but the hypotheses need to be backed up by strong evidence. It's not like, based on what I heard or what I believe. That's not a good scientific premise. That's not a good rigor in prior research. But does need to be supported by literature. Did somebody else already publish something that you thought is interesting and important that you can use as a backup or as a basis for your proposed work? And then you also can get it from your own preliminary data. If you have done some research already and you get some preliminary data, and you use that preliminary data as the basis for your proposal, right? So that's something that you need to keep in mind and make sure that you have that in place. And then innovation. Well, the definition of innovation, according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, so a new idea, method, or device, novelty, and then the introduction of something new, right? Obviously, innovation, we hear that all the time. And NIH Innovation Core Review Criterion is the question that, does the application challenge and seek the shift seek to shift current research or clinical practice paradigms by using novel theoretical concept, approaches or methodologies, instrumentation or intervention. Of course, again, depending on what your idea or you propose, maybe you may not be able to answer all these questions, but at least you should be able to write the proposed research is innovative because, right? Then you have to mention. So that's really helpful for the reviewer, because sometimes reviewer, when they try to help you, they try to find, okay, what is the innovation of this research? And they have to read again and again, try to find them. So I think it's better if you just write down the proposed research is innovative because this, right? Because this and this and this. So that would be very helpful. And then the next section is approach. Approach include research strategy. Moderator, if you can remind me how much time I have still, so I can adjust.
Yeah.
So research strategy, which is a narrative description of how you will accomplish your objectives or goals. So just like, putting pieces together. And of course, the main question is, are the overall strategy, methodology, and analysis well-reasoned and appropriate, right? Because all this go back to your specific aim. And then this is the thing that many people don't know. You need to be able to describe potential problems. It's not only, oh, I will do this, I will do that, I will do this, I will do that, and I will get this. But you need to be able to know the limits of your assay, to know the potential problem, right? And then come up with alternative strategies. And then you need to provide benchmarks for success. Of course, some experiments you have done that 100 times and you don't expect any problems anymore. Then you have to state that, right? For example, experiment X, we don't expect to see any problem because we have done this, and we have published this, and it should be no problem at all. But of course, not all of them like that. And so you need to be able to say something and then come up with alternative strategies. And then if the project is in the early stage of development, then you need to, do some feasibility studies, and then you have to discuss about the risky aspect and so on, and how you manage that, right? Because if the method that you are going to use has not been developed before and you plan to develop it, then you need to discuss about the feasibility and the risk and so on. And then approach or research strategy includes research design and then expected outcome. So each time you propose something, experiment, for example, at least you should tell the reviewer what do you expect, And then based on your expectation, then you can maybe make some conclusion, or at least putative conclusion. And then you need to describe, as I mentioned just now, potential problems and alternative approaches, and then benchmark for success and timelines, right? And so I mentioned here some of the common reasons for application not being funded. First is the lack of essential experiment, because if you have a question that you want to address, you need to provide, you need to do experiments to answer that completely. Like I mentioned, like I said just now, a lot of reviewers, they are from your own field. They know very well, the field. So, so that's something that you need to keep in mind. And then many people propose so much, that they are not focused, and so that's also not a good grant proposal, because it's all over the place. I mean, and then diluted and not focused. And then some proposal, they are overly ambitious. So unrealistic amount of work being proposed. And right, again, as a scientist, we know, what it takes to do some experiment and how long it would take. So when we read proposal that, propose this and that, and it all takes a lot of time. And then especially if you don't have enough manpower, you don't propose to hire enough people. And then immediately we know you won't be able to accomplish what you propose. And then key points in research design. The first one is rigor or thorough. This is, again, at NIH, they really look at this very carefully. How rigorous is your approach, right? I mean, this is something that, you have to address one particular question from different angle, multi-prongs. That would be a good approach, right? It's a rigorous. It's not only just do one experiment and make a conclusion, because there are a lot of other possibilities as well. And then focus, right? So you focus exactly what you want to achieve, and then don't talk too much about something that are irrelevant. And then avoid unnecessary details. Well, the one that you need to write in details, you need to write in details. But a lot of things that, like if you do, well, in case you do molecular biology, you want to do PCR, of course, there's nothing that details that you need to put in there, because it's very well established method. If you do NMR, or mass spec, why do you put any details in there? Because everybody understands if you do NMR, you will measure NMR in the instruments. And then another thing is a data quality. So that's something also that's being reviewed very carefully. So please include statistic if appropriate. And then reproducibility, make sure that you repeat the experiment. You should mention, you want to repeat how many times. So reproducibility is the closeness of the agreement between the result of measurements of the same measure and carried out with the same methodology. So nowadays, if you want to publish in a Nature paper or Nature series, every figures they ask you to claim or to mention how many times you do the experiment and with the same result, right? So that's reproducibility. And then expected outcomes, obviously I mentioned just now already. And then you have to know the limit of the technique that you use, what might go wrong, and how to fix it if something does go wrong, right? So because as a scientist, we know if you use certain method, we know the limitation of the method. You cannot overclaim it, because again, the reviewers, they are not stupid, right? They understand. It's better to, tell them that you understand, right? And then, but still you have to express confidence in your ability to accomplish the proposed work. Yeah, that you can show by, citing your papers there, or mention you have done this before, or mention you have the ability to do that. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, this is about investigators, right? And when we review grant proposal, even though the grant is great and everything else, the idea is great, but we want to know who are going to do this, right? The investigators. So then when you write a grant proposal, you have to evaluate yourself, evaluate your credential. Are you really well suited to the project? And do you have the necessary expertise? Do you have appropriate experience and training? And then have you demonstrate a record of accomplishment in the field? I've seen, grants, many grants, not much in the US, because people understand this and people have their own niche usually. They only study one particular field, especially new investigators. You have to focus. You cannot do too many different projects, different areas. The more established investigators, maybe they do many different things. So, if somebody who is doing plain secondary metabolism and suddenly they propose something related to animals, right? And then when you review that, then you feel like, okay, what is the experience of this person in dealing with animals? So, well, of course, it doesn't mean you cannot do that, but you have to show that you have the experience, you have the necessary expertise to do that. If not, then you have to find a collaborator or collaborators. Okay? And so basically, how do you convince the reviewers that you are the right person to do the proposed work? So that's the reason why in the US, typically, we stay within our own area and we build that credential, we build the reputation. So when people think about you, then they should be able to think about who you are as a scientist. If they cannot think about you as a scientist in your area, that's a little bit problem, right? So you need to build your reputation in certain areas. So when you apply something in that area of research, then immediately people will accept that, well, you are the expert, right? You are the expert. So you are the right person to do this, right? And then if the project is collaborative, and the question is, do you have complementary and integrated expertise? If you collaborate with your own mentor or your colleague who is doing the same thing, that's not a good collaboration. You need to collaborate with somebody who can fill the gap that you don't have, expertise of, right? And then if you collaborate with somebody, then the question is, do you have a good leadership plan? Who is going to take in charge? And if you fight, if who knows, right? I mean, people get tense and they fight each other. And what's happened with the project? So you need to have a good plan for that.
Yeah,
And then, of course, do you have?
Tycho? Yeah,
Yes.
probably we only have like 2 minutes left. Is
2 minutes.
that okay for
Very
you to
quick.
discuss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have evidence of prior successful collaboration? So, so writing paper together, that's a good idea. So the power of collaboration, is very significant, right? So do not afraid of doing collaboration with other people. And then environment contributes to success. Of course, this is most of the time, this is actually the responsibility of the institution. So if, Professor Junaidi, the dean here, presumably need to think more about providing a good environment to the scientists or rector or whoever in charge, because of course scientists will not be able to buy or to provide this kind of environments. Okay, and this environment is not only instrumentation. This include graduate program. Do you have graduate students to do the work? And this environment also include collaborators, include other established scientists in the department. So recruiting good scientists into your department is a good environment for everybody, right? And then other grant proposal component, including budget. You need to have good budget justification, biographical sketch. Of course, you need to make sure that everything in there nicely, and then facilities, laboratory, computer, because I'm not going to give you money if I know you don't even have a good instrumentation or you don't have, good laboratories, right? So this is common reason for application not being funded. The proposed research is not relevant to the mission of the funding agency, that's one. And then the application failed to follow instruction, and the budget is unrealistic or lacking justification, and the application did not answer review criteria. So you need to read, what the review criteria. Usually they publish it, usually they tell you, and many others, of course, and sometimes just bad luck. your proposal being read by somebody who always, negative about anything. So in that case, well, nothing much you can do. This, I guess, the last slide. What do reviewers ask themselves when reviewing your application? I would ask, why is this grant proposal special and deserving of funding? What singles out this grant proposal from all others under consideration? Because I have many proposals, and then I have to champion one or two of them. Otherwise, we don't have enough money to fund everybody, right? Everything. So that's something. So even though if you are not very outgoing, when you write grant proposal, you need to be different, right? So you will be singled out as somebody or as a proposal that is deserving of support. All right, thank you for your kind attention. I wish you success in writing winning international grant proposal. With that, I would like to close with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor Taifu. I hope you all enjoyed the fantastic presentation, and we will still have a Q&A discussions after all the presentations. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have known how to write a good research proposal, but now we also want to know how to get the opportunities to finding international grants. So we are moving to the next agenda, and I'm very pleased to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Amir Ali Popat, a special guest from Australia. Hi, Dr. Amir. Dr. Amir Ali Popat is a National Health and Medical Research Council Senior Research Fellow and the Director of Research at the University of Queensland School of Pharmacy. He has his PhD from Australian Institute of Bioengineering and Nanotechnology in 2012. Dr. Amir has a Bachelor of Pharmacy and Master of Pharmaceutical Science from Gujarat University. He has research interests in advanced drug delivery and nanomedicine, and Dr. Amir has published over 45 journal articles and has 3 patents in his name. His group has received more than $5 million funding in the past 5 years. He is also the current president of the Australian Control Release Society and the academic board member of CRR's focus group on nanoscience delivery. He is also an advisory board member of many journals such as Pharmaceutics, Drug Delivery and Translational Research, and also Nanoscale Horizons. And today, Dr. Amir will be sharing with us his expert opinion on the opportunities to getting international grant research. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Dr. Amir and help in welcoming him to deliver his presentations. Dr. Amir, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elida. Can you provide me the access to share my screen, please?
Okay, so just give me a second.
So while that's happening, I'd just like to thank Professor Zunaidi and the whole team for inviting me. I also want to thank Professor Taifu for an amazing talk. I think you have covered a lot of a very, very important aspect. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to speak a little bit about the aspect that I think is important, which sort of overlaps with what Professor Taifu said, but probably share some of my experience with the grant writing and sort of share some idea around Australian granting system and how it works. Okay. All right, let me just. Is it better now?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Better.
So, so thank you, Elida, for the nice introduction. So, as you're aware, I am a senior research fellow, and I'm also director of research within the institute at the School of Pharmacy, University of Queensland. My group focuses on advanced drug delivery technologies, and I think writing grant, as Professor was mentioned is an essential and, like a bread and butter these days to run a successful group, but also to actually do some research that can have a significant translational impact. Because without writing the grant, you will not have funding to do the high quality research that you want to do. So I will actually would like to say that before even writing the grant or before even thinking about writing the grant, I think it is very important that we think about, take a step back and think about why you want to write a grant and what exactly is your goal. Writing grant is different than writing a paper. Writing a publication, the way, the style, the outcome, the need is completely different to writing a grant. So if you are starting to write a grant, make sure that you do not write a grant as if you're writing a paper. Number two is choosing the right granting body before you even think about it. So for example, if I give you an example of an Australian system here, we have two main granting body. The one that is Australian Research Council, and the other one is National Health and Medical Research Council. Now, National Health and Medical Research Council deals with the research associated with human health and human health research, whereas the Australian Research Council mainly deals with the fundamental research, but that is non-human research. Now, that's not to say that you cannot work on genetics or you cannot work on fundamental biology. You can still apply for Australian Research Council grants if you're working on fundamental biology, but the outcome of that grant should not directly link to human health or translational human health. For that, you need to choose NHMRC. And ARC, if you apply for a grant, and if they find it you are ineligible because you've used animal models or human subjects or clinician, they will simply reject your proposal, and you have wasted all of that time and resources in applying for that grant. So I think it's very important to choose the right granting body, and that goes back to what Professor Taifo has mentioned, that reading the criteria, making sure that you are eligible for that. Another thing that I find very useful, especially at the early stage of your career, is to pull out the list of successful grant holders from the past few years. Usually, a lot of the granting bodies, a majority of the granting bodies at least have few years of past success grants listed. Pull the list out. Think about where your research fits in. Actually, you'll have to do a bit of a homework in understanding where the landscape is and how many proposals of the research that you are doing or you're planning to submit are actually funded. There's always a reason for that trend. And thinking about that and opening the research profiles of those researchers who've funded in your area and try to evaluate yourself where you sit in. Now, this is not to say that you have to have a Nature and Science publication to get a grant, but this is also to say that are you ready in terms of the track record in achieving that type of a grant. In certain grants, the track record does not matter that much. In certain grants, track record is everything. So in the new granting system of National Health and Medical Research Council, there are two types of grants. One is investigator grants, which is more like investigator-led fellowship, or it's a program grant. So I will apply for my program of research and I will have multiple projects in there. In that grant, the criteria is, the most important criteria is me, my research, my outputs, my patents, and then project. So 70% is you, your lab, your expertise, and 30% is the proposal. On the other hand, there is a grant system which is called Ideas Grant, where the novel idea and more high-risk research is rewarded compared to the person with 150 publications. So I think understanding the differences between those and then applying for grant is very, very important. So I talked about evaluating your CV, and then compiling the ideas into, say, what I usually do is I look at the criteria and reevaluate my CV and say where I am at and where I needs to be. Usually you do not apply for grants, new grants especially that you don't know about, with a 1 month or 2 month notice. I suggest you prepare a year in advance for those grants that you really want to apply. Start, understand where your strengths, and in that 12 months, how can you improve or tick the boxes that you are not currently ticking? Now, nobody is able to tick all the boxes. Very few people are able to tick all the boxes. So this is not to say that you should be disheartened by looking at that, but try and see where you can make improvements at least, so that that increases the chances of your success. And I think Professor Taifo has mentioned about reading and understanding the literature. I think that is the key to writing a first page of your grant. Understanding the gaps in the literature will help you to define the novelty aspect of your research. And not only manuscripts. I urge you all to look at patents. I urge you all to look at the commercial products. Try to compare your research to say that where exactly your product is fitting in that commercial market. And where's the gap? If you can do a fundamental research that can lead to a product development, that is what majority of the granting body is looking for, because their aim is to have that translational impact. Their aim is to have that bed to bedside, bench to bedside type of, outcome. So that's very important. Now, when you're applying for international grant, know your granting body. Do some research. So DAD is a German granting body. DOD, Department of Defense, is US. NIH is US. DST, DBT is India. NHMRC, ARC is Australia. It's impossible for a researcher to understand all of these granting body and write a proposal that suits the style of that. So having someone who has been successful in that grant is very important for you, and it's an important friend, important collaborator. Think about those collaborators in advance. Look at the interest, look at the cross-pollination, look at the ability of those researchers to complement your research and work with them. When I say work with them, everybody has their priorities. So if I want to contact Professor Taifo, who is a very busy person, and say that, can you be on my grant? I need to have a genuine, compelling reason and genuine, compelling cross-pollination interest. So I need to sell my idea to him first, saying that I have this great idea, but your research is going to take it to another level, and justify that. If you are able to do that with that researcher, then you are able to easily do that with the granting body, because granting body does not like you just putting a name of a professor or a big person without a justification. So that's very important, and that's why having a collaborator is important. I think Professor Mahmood, or Professor Taifo Mahmood, has clearly mentioned the instructions and eligibility. I think it's very important to read the criteria and ensure that you are eligible. If you're borderline eligible, if you think you have a conflict, contact the granting body and ask them before writing the grant. You do not want to waste your time, your resources, and also granting body's resources, because there will be people like me and Professor who will be reading the grants, and it's our time that is also important. So you don't want to send a grant that is not eligible. As I said, find a local collaborator. So there's a grant that I applied for Canada, and I got rejected last year. One of the things that I found, maybe the reason, is Canadian collaborator in there. So if a philanthropic organization or a granting body of Canada or Australia is funding you, they would like to see that impact or the dollars going to their own country as well. Everybody has their own priorities. So if I'm applying for grants collaboration with Indonesian agencies, then if I say, oh, the 95% of the money is going to come to Australia, they would not like it. But if I say that the 90% of the funding goes to Indonesian institution and the 10% of my contribution comes to Australia, they might say, yeah, it's okay. So it has to be reasonable. It has to be justifiable. Highlight the aims and outcome of the research, matching the key deliverables of the granting body. Some granting bodies are looking for an outcome that is very close to the clinic. Some granting bodies are looking for an outcome that is a high-risk research. So blue sky ideas, you know, and blue sky ideas do turn into translational research as well. So don't be afraid of selling your blue sky idea. You know, I mean, the blue sky idea of CRISPR-Cas9 just won the Nobel Prize 2 days ago. So I think blue sky research is very important, and how to sell that, that's very important. Don't rush in applying for grant, as I said. Give yourself some time. So if I'm applying for a grant, that scheme that runs year after year, I know that it's an annual scheme. Prepare yourself a year in advance. Contact your collaborators in that country. Work with them. Have an exchange of a student. Write an article if, you know, due to COVID, you can't travel. That shows collaboration. That shows ability to work with someone else. That shows, you know, partnership. That shows justification. And then apply. Your local person in, so if you're applying for a grant in your own country, you know a lot about that. But if you're applying international grants, your local person is a key person who knows how research in that region works, and what is the way of writing the grants. So for example, until 2018, the National Health and Medical Research Council, the grants were quite different. The grants were project-based and not idea-based. And those project-based grants, they want to see each and every aim, you should have some preliminary data. Now, imagine that, you not knowing that, and you apply for a grant of a blue sky idea that you have very small amount of data, you will be rejected. But now the granting body has changed the scheme, which now have ideas grant, which is more blue sky, more risky. Now, if you write a research proposal in the older ways, you won't be succeeding. So understanding those nuances is very important as well. Again, I'm very thankful for Professor Taifo for covering majority of the thing. But if you think a first page is most important, regardless of the country, if it's US, Indonesia, Australia, the first page is so that's your sales pitch. That's your pitch of your grant. And first page is the most important thing. One of the things that I've learned, especially for international grants like DoD, Department of Defense, or NIH, so I've been successful in a DoD grant last 2 years ago, that budget is very, very important. Not understanding the budget and not properly justifying the budget can kill the grant straight away, regardless of how good a research proposal is, regardless of how good a research profile of a researcher is. Another thing is that the granting body sometimes, when they fund you, international granting bodies, your university will have overhead. Calculating those overheads is very important. So for example, Department of Defense have different overhead calculations and percentage for different university. Our university is between 30 and 40%. So if you get a $1 million US dollar grant, $300,000 will go to university and not come to you. So you need to have that in your mind when you're calculating the amount of money you need to finish the research. Because if you think that you need $1 million to complete the research, but you forgot about the overheads, you're only going to get $700,000. And then you won't be able to report it back to the DoD, or you won't be able to complete all the aims. So then you won't get the grant next time if you don't follow the rules. So understanding all of these things is very important, especially if you're applying for a big grant outside your country. And then variation and negotiation. So you can work with your university and negotiate. For example, some granting bodies, overseas granting body, ask for a co-contribution. So if you're applying for $100,000 US dollar grant, your university needs to put 20% of that or 50% of that. Industry needs to put 10% of that sometimes when there's an industry grant. Understanding all of that, negotiating with your department, negotiating with your university is also a key aspect of any grant. And then reporting is extremely important. So I wanted to keep this session really brief. So I've only got 2 or 3 slides, but I think I'm very glad that Professor Taifo has covered a lot of things in detail about the writing the proposal, but I just wanted to give you a big picture of writing an international grant. But I'm happy to answer any questions in the Q&A once we finish. Thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amir. I was wondering, we still have a couple of time. Will you be able to stay with us to answer some questions from the audience?
Sure. Yep, yeah, I am.
Okay. So I would like to read some questions, but while we are waiting for the organizing committee, I'll just want to propose a questions to you. And we heard about that, I saw that Professor Taifu has mentioned previously about don't rush for writing a grants applications, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us as an academia working like doing a lectures, doing a research, and also applying for grants. And I heard that in US and probably in Australia, lecturer or researcher can choose that they are focusing on applying grants like 6 months in advance. So what do you think is your opinion? So can you just give us some tips like how to manage the time so we can manage to apply the international grants, but we are still doing our job as an academia?
What I would say is that you can do that by multiple fold. If the granting body is it's an annual grant, then as I said, prepare in advance. So I teach in one semester, but luckily for me, I don't teach in the second semester. So that semester is my semester where I compile all my grant ideas and keep it ready before Christmas, go on a holiday, come back, and the granting season starts and I'm ready. But that's not possible always, and I totally appreciate that. One of the ways to counteract that is that when you are designing your research group meetings, or when you are working with PhD students or postdocs, ask them to prepare their presentation in a grant style. They are the workforce for you. So if you benefit as a group leader, they are the ones who are going to benefit of having a job or having your quality workforce. So I always give them assignments to write first page of a grant that you want to apply in next year. Ask them to prepare slides in a way that that focus on not paper but focus on grant. When I have group presentations, I ask every alternate weeks when we have group presentation, one student will present their research data, but the other student will present something outside our research, but slightly similar in a very high impact journal. So that triggers new ideas, have a literature, and they present. And sometimes asking them, sometimes we feel that, oh, they are so young, how can they write it? But you will be very surprised the kind of aims or hypotheses that they can come up with can really help you. So that's the second way of dealing with that. The third way is that I'm not discouraging rushed grant writing. If you are applying for rushed grant writing in your own country and you know the system well, that is still feasible. But I'm more concerned when you want to apply, you are doing a rush grant writing for an international granting body like NIH or DOD or ARC. I think that's why you need a lot of planning, because it is not only your reputation, it is the reputation of the university that you are in. And going, high quality proposal to DOD from your university, everybody wants that. So I think that is what my opinion is on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it just makes sense like to involve the student as well, because they can learn also from us. And then sometimes I also like when we have a novel idea, sometimes the student, because they can read a lot, they have more time to read. So, absolutely. And then, yeah. And another question that I was wondering, like, is there any specific time, a spatial age, for example, like people say that 5 years after you finish your doctoral degree or your PhD is the golden period. So it's the best time to apply some international grants or apply from the fellowship. Is there, from your experience, is there any age limit? Like the reviewer will say, okay, so this one is too old to apply the grants. This is too young, have no experience. So what do you think about that? Is there a specific time or age?
So I'll tell you, I have actually broken all of those rules myself. So I finished my PhD in July 2012. I won my first fellowship in 2013. And everybody at the time was saying that, oh, this is too early for you. You're not going to get a fellowship. There's no way you're going to get a fellowship.
Okay.
I won a second fellowship right after that, where everybody was saying there's no way you're going to get this fellowship. I think it differs a little bit depending upon the granting body, but I think applying for fellowship is based on your CV and based on your idea and based on the mentor, especially at the early stage. Who are your mentors? And that's where having collaborators on your papers, that's where having to lead some papers at an early stage of your career. So I think I would say that first 3 years post PhD, it is highly important that you convince your supervisor, convince your mentor, or whoever you want to call it, to be co-corresponding authors, to lead small projects, to lead small team of students, have your name as a co-supervisor of a PhD. I think fellowships are usually given to people who are on the pathway to becoming independent. And your only way to show that pathway is that, are you supervising student? Are you mentoring anyone? Are you writing corresponding author papers? How many students graduated with a thesis under you? I think those things are very important. And I made sure that I convinced my supervisor. And sometimes there is a difference of opinion. And I agree. A lot of the times, the experienced researchers will give you a very right advice.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times that advice is conservative. I wouldn't say it's wrong. It is right, but it is conservative. And you need to decide you want to take that risk or not. So I've taken a lot of risk, and I think, so in Australia, we don't have assistant professors. So when you become independent, it's called lecturer.
Yes.
And then you become senior lecturer, and then you become associate professor. So there's a different system here. But here also, applying for fellowship is potentially the best way to become independent. Having, say, for example, in the US, having your R01 is a first step towards, having your independence. So I would say that go for it. I have had, so 95% of my grants or awards or papers that I've submitted are rejected. But those 5% makes me who I am, because I applied for those. Every time I write another award application, another grant application, I can use the information that I've done in my previous one, and I can learn from it and sort of improve. So, so I think taking a risk, having good mentors around you to guide you and who believes in you is the key.
Yeah, I think that's the one that you just mentioned is very important, like brave to take a risk, and then it's like have a good mentor as well. And it's now that I have one question from the audience before I continue to my questions from Dr. Eman Hussein to asking about, is there any biasness about the country or region in accepting the international grants? And what type of qualities of the applicant make him or her more eligible for the grants? So it's asking about the biasness about, is that any granting bodies just like choosing a specific country or region to decide whether these people can get the grants because he's coming from specific country or regions? That's the first question. And then the second one is that, what type of qualities of the applicants that make him are eligible for the grants?
So again, it is difficult. It depends on the goals of the granting body. So National Health and Medical Research Council and Australian Research Council have clearly stated in the grants that you need to be associated with a university within Australia, and you need to be present in the Australia of the 80% of the granting period that you are. So that automatically rules out a lot of people. But granting bodies like DOD, NIH, some calls, special calls for DBT, international body DAD, they don't have limits, and I don't think it is based on, my belief is positive, that I think they are willing to give you research money if you fit the criteria and if the reviewers who are giving the right comments. I don't think there is a region specific biasness. However, there are region-specific funds that are allocated.
Yeah.
So Australian taxpayers who are paying tax in Australia, they would want the research money from Australia go to Australian researchers. So that's clearly stated in the grant application. But if it's not clearly stated, and if it is open to international applicants, I don't see a reason why there should be a biasness. The only thing that can contribute to such thinking is that potentially, I think the university reputation and the feasibility and the facilities that you have can sometimes question reviewers, the ability for the funded project to be finished in a timely manner.
Yes.
And I think that as long as you are able to justify that, and my suggestion to do that more effectively is get a letter from the university, talk about in-kind contribution in the budget. So in-kind contribution is that, university has such facilities free for us. How much would it cost normally if university hadn't had that facility? If you're able to do that in the granting application in the budget section, I think that will help you, of course.
Yeah, I think that's also answered about the quality of the applicants, including the infrastructure or the equipment that you have to make sure that the grants, when it's funded, this research can be completed. And so we still have one more time. I would like to ask another question. What do you think the impact of the international grant receipt on academic career, both as we are as individually or the impact to the university or our institution?
I think for university, it is the best thing. Universities run on 2 or 3 models, and one of the key criteria is the research impact and the ranking. And international grants can lift your international reputation and the research impact. A lot of the international granting body and the research for researchers for promotion and for their own confidence, I think it is very good, because you can now say that your research is not only peer reviewed or recognized by the national researchers, but the international researchers around the world. And I think that's a very compelling argument for you to have when you apply for national grants in the future, because the national granting reviewers will say, oh, this person has got a NIH grant or a DoD grant, for example. So I think it can be career changing. I think it's extremely important, and one must try it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm afraid that we have limited by the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Amir. Will you still be able for the end of discussion, or you will need to leave for another meeting? Or
I need to leave for another meeting.
All right.
I will see if I can join in between.
Yes.
Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And I also want to thank Professor Taifo for a really nice talk. I really enjoyed from your talk. So thank you very much. And I'll keep in touch with you separately.
Yeah, thank you so much. See ya. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the presentation from our second speaker, Dr. Amir Ali Papet. And we are now moving to the next agenda. Last but not least, I would like to introduce our third speaker, Professor Badri Munir Sukocho, that's already here with us. Hello, Professor Badri. Yeah, good morning, Professor Badri.
Yes. Good morning.
Yes. Okay, so I would like to read biography of Professor Badri. Dr. Badri Munir Sukocho is a professor at Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Erlangga, and he recently been appointed as the Director of School of Graduate Studies, Universitas Erlangga. He has his PhD focused on strategic management and master degree in marketing management from National Cheng Kung University, Taiwan. Professor Badri has a bachelor degree in marketing management from Universitas Erlangga. He has research interest in inter and intra-organizational learning, innovative and imitative behavioral strategy, and competitive dynamics. Professor Badri has published more than 20 papers on journal indexed by Web of Science and more than 20 papers on journal indexed by Scopus and 3 books. He has been invited in prestigious international conferences abroad more than 50 times. and he currently has under review paper on 7 top-tier journals in Q1. His research grant has received from International Research Collaboration Grant and the National Research Grants, and also the Universitas Erlangga Research Grants. Professor Badri is currently also managing editor of 2 national journals and serves as reviewer board on 5 international journals indexed by Scopus. And today, Professor Badri will be sharing with us his expert opinion on strategy in applying international research grant. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your full attention to Professor Badri and help me to welcoming him to deliver his presentation. Professor Badri, over to you.
Thank you for your nice introduction, Dr. Zairina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy and also Vice Dean, as well as all of the participants, as well as Professor Mahmud, Taiful Mahmud. Good morning, everyone. Today I would like to discuss a little bit about my experience and also from macro perspective. I think Professor Mahmud already discussed about the detail as well as Professor Papot just now about how to apply the grant and etc. Let me start my presentation with explaining that why should we care about applying international competitive grant. International research, by applying international grant, it is really important for the university because, of course, as mentioned by Dr. Patot previously, that it will increase the ranking of the university as well as the reputation of the university itself. And also, according to QS University Ranking of Asia, International Research Network comprise around 10% of the indicators, and also for research itself, it's around 20%, with citation 10%, paper per faculty 5%. It's quite big number when we multiply with academic peer review that usually reflected research quality is totally around 60%. Well, but times higher education is the same, around 60% of our research will be contribute to our ranking itself. And this is some data that we can refer to for international research collaboration. As we can see that regardless of Japan or maybe Indonesia or Australia, international collaboration, even though they only contribute around 1/4 of their publication, but the citation is quite high compared to maybe only national collaboration or only institutional collaboration or single authorship. Why should I mention about this? Because international research grant usually require international research collaboration. So when we apply research grant from global institutions, it means that we will engage internationally to collaborate with others, and then it will affect the citation of ourselves as well as our institutions. As we can see that in Japan, international collaboration has 12.3 citation per publication, while only national collaboration is 5.6. Only institutional collaboration, for example, like from Erlangga with Erlangga's scholar is only 4.3, 1/3 of international collaboration. And again, related with academic corporate collaboration, usually when the grant provided by the company or maybe the research foundation from the company base, usually it will increase the citation itself. Although the number is not quite big, 5.4%, but citation per publication in Japan is quite high, 12.9. What about in specific field, for example, like life sciences and medicine? The same. As we can see that International collaboration in Japan for life sciences and medicine is 14.4, while academic and corporate collaboration, if the grant provided by the corporate foundation, it will increase 21.8 citation per publication. In social science, it's quite the same. Australia also the same, as we can see that citation is quite high if we engage collaboration with global researcher. With corporate collaboration is also quite high, 3 times compared to no academic corporate collaboration. In life science also the same. What about Indonesia? Indonesia is like this. International collaboration increased the citation 7 times compared to other types of research collaboration, while academic corporate collaboration increased 25 times of citation compared to no academic corporate collaboration. In terms of life sciences, pharmacy is in here. International collaboration is 11.9, almost 6 to 7 times compared to single authorship, as well as only institutional collaboration. Of course, single authorship is quite good for our promotion, but it is not good for citation. It means that by engaging with partner from global, it will increase our citation probability compared to without international collaboration, as well as the academic and corporate collaboration. If we apply the grant from the foundation from a company, it will increase the citation itself. This one, I just want to show that research collaboration between Osaka and Elanga. This is one types of sensing that I use usually when I serve as the head of planning and development board. I will check Osaka, mostly collaborate with CNRS, Harvard University, and etc. While with Elanga is only 13 publications. So it is a good opportunity for Elanga to engage with Osaka's researcher. This is the name that Osaka researcher that we can take a look, and then maybe we can send an email, try to introduce ourselves, and then try to offer whether those professors are willing to engage with us as a partner in applying research grant. With Deakin also the same. Elanga is only 2 publications with 3 Deakin scholars, and Deakin quite good with Auckland, Chinese Academy of Science, and etc. Okay, for Elanga it's not quite good because we collaborate internationally. I think less than 20% of our publication, I think. So it means that with less international collaboration, and then our citation will be less, because as we know that with international collaboration, it will increase our citation itself. And then this is some sources from the government of Indonesia if we want to apply the budget or grant. One is, of course, LPDP, Risiko Kolaborasi Internasional. The guideline for this grant, you can take a look on the website, and also Ristek Brin with schema world-class research. Previously, I was the one who designed for this world-class research. We can go abroad, and then we can use the money up to 1 billion rupiah to apply world-class research. But now I think due to COVID and etc., I think the government like to reduce the budget for world-class researcher. But previously we designed around 1 to 2 billion for this grant. I think it is quite worth it. And also they require, for example, like if you want to apply world-class research under social science, they require around its index 20 for our partner, while for natural science and life science and medicine, at least 40 for each index. Indonesian foundations, Tanoto Foundation facilitate medical research, especially with pharmacy and also medical faculty. And Tahir Foundation, I think 2 years ago, we got lucky, we got 10 billion from Tahir Foundation for this one. And foreign governments, AMINEF, Fulbright ASEAN Research Award Program. The American usually get this opportunity to Fulbright ASEAN Research Award Program. We can, for example, like we can offer Professor Mahmoud, please come to Indonesia, and then I'm willing to be your partner. And then there are some opportunities for you to come to Indonesia with specific duties or responsibilities. For example, like join FICs and etc. And also research. US Scholar Research grantees to conduct research in area of expertise in Indonesia. It's quite interesting. And also Canada, as we can see, because I'm the one that granted by Edu Canada also this year, but due to COVID, I cannot go to Canada to get some training over there and then do some research with Toronto University. And another one is international NGOs. I think some of us already knows about Newton Fund, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and etc. Who are the potential partners? Of course, we can contact our former advisor if we study abroad, and former lab mates, or maybe former classmates. This number 2 and number 3 that I've done it during this year. Due to COVID, I cannot go abroad, and then I just contact some of my lab mates or classmates, try to engage with them, and then if you have any research, maybe I can collaborate with you, or maybe I can contribute something to you based on complementary approach. For example, like maybe I will do the data collection, and then you will do the theoretical part. Data collection and also analysis belong to me, and then you are in theoretical development, something like that. And then also top scientists that we refer to. This is also my strategies. Last year, I went to Sweden to come and then work with my mentor, top scientist. I stayed there around 2 weeks with my own budget, research budget, and then try to develop research based on comparison between Sweden and Indonesia, and it is quite good as a start to do and apply research grant from global funding. And also other researcher with similar research interest in a reputable conference. This one is also I've done it. For example, like with Professor Jamal Samsi from Michigan State University. I've done like this. I asked if you come to Academy of Management conference, or one of the reputable conference in management, and then we discuss a little bit around 1 or 2 hours, and then we continue with an email, and then I start to write a proposal to submit it to Kemenristek Dikti at the time, and then I've got the budget for that, and it's also quite interesting. This is an example for me that I've done it in 2013. I've got the budget from National Science Council of Taiwan for 3 years. I engaged with Professor Wang Yi, which is my who was my former advisor. For this, this is the target that I set up for National Science Council of Taiwan. And then the roadmap, of course, we need to provide the roadmap of our research, assessing a strategic alliance for my PhD dissertation, and then exporters funded by Universitas Airlangga. And then in 2013, I developed the inter-organizational learning between 2 organizations, either supplier or buyer, or maybe competitor with the imitator. And this is the framework that I've done. As we can see that in here, I apply 3 years for the budget. that they already funded for me. First year, we did a literature review, in-depth interview with some company, and also did some meta-analysis paper. And then second year, we did a survey in Indonesia and Taiwan by using multivariate data analysis. And then this is the schedule of meta-analysis for first year, up to 12 months. And then this is the result of first year. Second revision, 1 paper submitted, 1 paper, National Accredited Journal, 3 papers, with 1 accepted, second revision 1, and then submitted 1. And this is the result of the first year, as I told you just now. And also there is 1 book that I've done it already, and also some student exchange, because by having international research grant, we able to send our student to go and then visit Taiwan and then do some research in Taiwan. And also I asked my former advisor to come and then teach in our PhD program starting from 2012 up to now. So it is both sides benefit, I think, by having research grant with global or maybe international funding. And then this is the second, the tentative schedule of experiment year 1. We did some experiment on that by having MBA students from Indonesia and Taiwan to do some experiment on it. This is the experiment that I've done it by using scenario development and questionnaire. And then the third year, I think we did some multiple case studies by using qualitative method. This is the one that I've done it for transmedia that last year previously published with Pak Khairul Tanjung and Pak Ishadi SK based on this project actually. This is the tentative schedule of survey across nations and etc. So in conclusion, I think, in my opinion, international research grants increase research collaboration and citation. As I mentioned before, the data from SciFal already proved that if we did collaboration internationally, and then of course our paper will have co-authors from the country, right? And then it will increase the citation of our paper. And then second one, different types of institutions, NGOs and countries provide different schemes. So for me, I think sense and apply it based on their guidelines. For example, like in the middle of last year, I think we sent an announcement to all of our researchers in Airlangga, please apply MIRA, MIT Indonesia Research Alliance. And at the time, I expect that we can apply around 30 scholars from Airlangga. However, up to 1 week before the deadline, only 3 researchers only from Airlangga to apply MIRA itself. So because I'm the coordinator, so I just then I apply by myself, and then I'm the 4th one to get MIRA funding with MIT professor, and it's really good. It's really worth it, I think. My intention is that if there are some opportunities, please don't try to avoid it. Just try to apply it and then get some experience on it. And then find the most suitable partners based on complementary approach. A partner has up-to-date laboratories. For example, like my partner in MIT Sloan School of Management, they have their laboratory for big data. So I get the data from Bukalapak or Tokopedia, and then I run it there because they have this equipment. In here, I think I cannot do it. And then I say that to my partner, Professor Nejin, that I will do theoretical and hypothesis development, and then it's done. Senior editors, this is the one that I've done it 3 months ago, I asked one of the editor from a reputable journal from Hong Kong, a Chinese University of Hong Kong, to collaborate with me and on a paper. That one is a complementary approach because my perspective or my understanding is only as a scholar, but his perspective from editor's perspective, so he can give me some insights on. And of course, a top scientist, the one that I done it with a Sweden scholar, it's really helped me to open up my mind and perspective, as well as how to apply international research grant. And again, design and develop research framework for mid or long-term projects. This is, I think, quite interesting, I think, because we can apply to many different topics because it will be difficult for us to digest, I think. So long-term project and with a solid research framework, with solid methodology, I think it will help us to get the funding from global institutions. I think that's it, Dr. Zairina. Hopefully my sharing can inspire some of you, and we can discuss a little bit after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Badri. I hope you all enjoyed the fantastic presentation from Professor Badri. Ladies and gentlemen, now all the speakers, we have Professor Badri here, Professor Taiful Mahmud here, will answer some questions that were sent to us during the presentations. Okay, so if you still have questions that need to ask to the speakers, just format of the questions like the one that's showing on the screens. And then if you are access this webinar through Zoom, you can put it on the Q&A panel. And if you are accessing from YouTube channel, you can just put it your question through live chat. So we are waiting for the question from the audience. Okay, I would like to ask first questions, I think, to Professor Badri. Okay, so we still have, yep, we have a couple of questions, I can see. And thank you so much for those who just joined this webinar. Okay, this is the first question that I would like to read to Professor Taiful. From Emmanuel Guama, how can a researcher get information on available grants in his field of study? You're still muted, Professor Taiful. Okay.
Sorry. Well, yeah. Right. Thank you for the questions, Emmanuel. So I think you have several options. First option is you proactively looking for the opportunity online. So you can search basically funding agency and see if anything related to your field. Second question, really, usually we hear funding opportunity, the one that is not common, usually like about something completely different, that's from our colleagues. So from friends or from some other colleagues, sometimes they share that information with you. But systematically, actually, each university or faculty or department or faculty in Indonesia, we call it faculty or colleges, actually can do that. So typically in the United States, every university or every colleges even have their research office, and they look for those kind of opportunity, and then basically inform their faculty members, inform the researchers in the university, like Professor Badri, perhaps forwards information about grant opportunity to their researchers. So yeah, you can do multiple ways, but for us, because we typically apply to only certain agencies, we are not looking for too many different funding agencies, really. So in my case, I focus on NIH, National Institute of Health, and then sometime NSF, National Science Foundation. Then more recently, I've been collaborating with my colleague in the ag school, the botany plant pathology department. So we are looking for antibiotics to treat plant disease, for example. Then we apply grant to U.S. Department of Agriculture, for example. So it's very specific. If you are a regular scientist, typically you know already those funding agencies, and like NIH, they have like 3 opportunity a year, and NSF nowadays they don't even have deadline. You can just submit your proposal anytime you are ready, and USDA usually once a year. Yeah, and beyond that, typically we don't really try to look for many other different funding agency, because the more you are familiar with the system of certain funding agency, the better chance you have, rather than just randomly apply for other, any grant opportunities, right? So, but I think in conclusion, basically 2 option or multiple option. One, maybe proactively looking for it, or set up, encourage your institution to set up a system to, to find that kind of information and spread the information to the researcher in that institution.
Yeah,
I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Taifu. Probably, Professor Badri, do you have something to add related to the questions? Because Professor Taifu has mentioned that it depends also on your faculty or institution. Like I believe the Universitas Erlangga also have a research innovations unit that probably Professor Badri would like to add about the information.
Yes, I do agree with Professor Tafo that we need to proactively search and then try to find the grant that is suitable for us. And of course, the one of the managers in the institution, I think we need to proactively search all of the information and then spread it out to our scholars systematically. For example, like maybe I because I'm the advisory board for MIRA program, so I just search, I just share the information to all of our colleagues, but of course, I'm not the one who in charge in other foundation or in other scheme. So I think LPE, the research institute in our university, and also from the dean, maybe vice dean, the third vice dean for research affairs will do it, because in our performance indicator also indicate that how many research grant that applied and then approved by the funding body from outside Erlangga University. So it will stimulate the dean as well as the vice dean as well as LPE, the Research Institute of Erlangga University, to find and search and then facilitate researcher to apply research grant from other than Erlangga's funding, because it will show that we are credible. So many granted body provide funding, and also so we are trustable or credible for them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Taifu and Professor Badri. So we are moving to the next question from Neni Purwitasari. Apologize, the committee about the second question. Okay. Thank you for the interesting talk, and it's a great honor to me to have joined publication. Oh, this is one of our staff from Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga. And her question is, do the track record of the proposal writers like Scopus high index is also the important things that we should consider about when we are applying some grant applications?
Right. For international grants, typically people don't care too much, or there is no requirement what about your H index, right? But but realistically, of course, H index indirectly show your reputation or show your achievement as well. The higher H index you have, of course, that means you have been published a lot. And that's so in when we read grant proposal, usually it's come with biographical sketch or your CV, and in there, of course, you have to provide information about your references or your paper, right? And based on that, so we pay attention very closely about the papers. And first of all, because that's really show your productivity. The second, show your credential or your experience, and show your field. Because if your paper all talking about drug discovery, and then suddenly you apply for, like like engineering or something like that, that's immediately we know, oh, this is not the right person. And then, of course, the quality of paper where you publish is very important as well. So that's why, because from there we can judge the quality of your research. I mean, if you only publish, in a very low
ranking journal.
ranking journals, then why would we give you money, right? I mean, you will end up getting that kind of data or that kind of publication. So, but people who have been published in Nature, Science, and so on, definitely, we are humans. When we look at that, we say, oh my goodness, right? This guy must be very good. And of course, then everybody would support the proposal. And that's the reason why I mentioned just now, it is important for you to first to decide or develop your own niche, meaning people know what your expertise is, and then you develop your reputation, and you publish in in this. And it is important to choose the right journal, so that because some people just want to publish to fulfill the requirement from the department or from the university by numbers, but then nobody really even read the publication. It's kind of sad to see people spend a lot of time and a lot of stress to get a publication, but then it end up, in a journal nobody even care about. So, as a scientist, we need to really think about that, especially like, University of Erlangga, of course, one of the top-ranked university in Indonesia. I think we need to change that mindset. Okay, number matters, of course. The more you publish, the better. But from time to time, you want to have a good publication as well, so that people can tell, oh yeah, you are doing a good research.
Okay, yeah, that's really true. Like, so number is still matter, but the quality, that's the most important things, I think. Okay, thank you so much. And we are moving to the next question. Okay, from Hari, asking about, you mentioned that the significance is the most important in the proposed project. Could you share how is the best way to deliver it on the proposal?
Right. So thank you for the question. That is a very good question. And, of course, many of us doing basic science as well, right? Many of us doing basic science. Sometimes it is a challenge really to tell people why you are doing this. It is not enough just to say, well, I'm interested, well, I think this is cool. Well, fine, you like it, but nobody will give you money. So you need really to be able to tell people, this is really important thing to do. So of course, then you need to find, first of all, you need to have a scientific, the background information, like literature or something, and then find the niche or find the gaps or the need. And if you do some kind of, drug discovery, actually it's very easy, right? You just find certain disease that have no drug, for example, And then, of course, the need is there. And then you can tell the consequence of not meeting that need. Well, if we don't have this drug, then presumably a lot of people will die. For example, if you talk about anti-tuberculosis, anti-TB, then you can put a lot of, data showing how many people, I think right now it's still about 500,000 to 1 million people died every year because of tuberculosis, even though we have medicine to treat tuberculosis like rifampicin, INH or ethambutol and so on. But many Mycobacterium tuberculosis become resistant nowadays, and you have this multi-drug resistant TB or you have XDR TB. Then, yeah, you have to be able to tell that story, right from the beginning. So when people see that, immediately they know, oh, what you're doing is really significant. What you're doing is really important. Then that's, make them feel like they want to read more and more. It's not like the first page. That's the reason why I said the first page is very important. When they read the first page, you already lose your interest. Then that's pretty much the end of your, grand proposal. Okay, because after that, then reviewer tend to look for any reason not to fund this proposal because they don't like it right from the beginning, right? So, I have to be honest with you. It is not easy to write that first page. It's not easy. And even like us, we have been doing this for many, many years. It's always challenging. And then, so here in my department, we have like every month we meet, among us faculty members. We call it YIP, work in progress. It's kind of discussion about your research, and then sometimes we present our first page of our future grant proposal, our next grant proposal, and we just share it with our colleagues, and then everybody read, and then they provide suggestion or question. Sometimes it's amazing, people come up with something that you never thought about before. So, and then that's, of course, if you receive that information and you are open-minded, you think, oh yeah, that's a good. And if they don't understand what you are trying to say there, well, that's your problem already, because you don't write it nicely so that other people can understand you.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah, thank you so much. And we are moving to the fourth questions from Anissa Ahmad. How if my research want to prove a new idea based on, I think this is based on the literature, but the literature said maybe it cannot be proven. Is it still innovation research? And how about the funding's applications?
Right. So, well, if your research based on the a new idea, if your research want to prove a new idea based on literature, first of all, of course, you need to take a look if the literature is legitimate or not, because a lot of literatures and
not, yeah.
Right. So you need to really, of course, one literature from a very nobody know journal. So that's not very strong, right? I mean, if somebody discovers something and then based on that, then you come up with a new idea. Maybe I will use this information and then to prove my ideas, right? And need to be your own ideas, though, to be considered as innovative. So if you have something, it's not, if you just want to prove other people's finding, that's completely not innovative, because, well, what is new there? So if, for example, if somebody find one molecule and then they see, they have a preliminary data showing maybe this molecule affect alpha glucosidase enzyme, for example. Then you have an idea, oh, maybe I can try or make analog of this molecule to test them as anti-diabetic drugs. Well, perhaps that's, and of course, innovation is not about idea, right? I mean, you can be innovative in the technology or the approach. So people haven't used certain approach, then you want to use them. Or you combine several different approaches that nobody ever done before.
Yeah.
That's also innovative, right? So innovation is quite broad, but as long as what you are trying to do or you plan to do is really significant, can answer or address question or address a gap in the field that is still missing, right? Or can address the needs. So those, those go back to significant. So that's the reason why I said significant is very important. Whatever you do, presumably you need to think about why I'm doing this. So I have, like I said just now, I have a problem when, some of our colleagues ask me to help with, writing international manuscript or papers, then reading the manuscript, right? And then immediately it's very difficult for me to make a story, because why we are doing this, right? So that's, of course, that goes back to the proposal. If the proposal is not clear, why, if you just say, well, this plant has been used, for 1,000 years here, and is being known as can treat malaria, but then many cases that, well, plants in Indonesia also present or grow in Malaysia, in Vietnam, or in India. And those plants, a lot of them have been, investigated before. So you need to read literature and find out. So nowadays, if people propose to me, to do collaboration about, certain plant metabolites, the first thing, my question was, have you really checked, read all the publication about this? Because somebody proposed something that, the plan that I have done, back in 1994, right? But this person even didn't know that I published that paper. So that was odd, right? I mean, if you want to do something, you need to really check the background,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, to answer this question again, innovation can be anything.
Yeah.
As long as your idea is really new. It's not just to prove somebody else result,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's we already seen from Professor Badri presentation that he managed to get the funding from the meta-analysis. So correct, Professor Badri. So it's just like putting a new evidence through meta-analysis is also part of innovations, I think. Okay, so we're moving to the next questions. I think this is handle when paper get rejected from the reviewer. I think is can we just move into the number 6 questions and then we can answer after that. If we want, from Caroline, if we want to write a proposal for international grant, should we conduct the preliminary research to obtain the screening data, or is it possible if we write just based on the recently reference and the current problems? As we know that for doing the preliminary research is also need fund. I think the question number 5 is also Professor Badri can give a comment as well. And so please, Professor Taiful, if you like to answer for the both questions. And Professor Badri as well, yeah.
Maybe Professor Badri want to start with number 5.
Yeah, for number 5, Professor Badri, if you could give comments about the question from Hadiati.
Okay, thank you for the question, Bu Hadiati. I think when my paper get rejected, I will take a look on the reasons that they rejected. For example, like because my field is in management, right? Mostly we did some survey or maybe experiment or secondary data and something like that. When we did experiment or survey, usually we use PLS, simultaneous equation modeling, and then some reviewers, usually from top tier journals, are not comfortable with the use of PLS as a statistical tools, and then they request to use different tools, which is AMOS, to do SEM. So of course, based on this reviewer comment, I will use this statistical tool to comply with the reviewer's comment. And if the reviewers and also the editors say that if you change this, and then I might consider your paper to be reviewed by our journal, or maybe to be published in our journal, and then I will answer point by point each of reviewers' comment as well as the editor, and then resubmit it again to the journal, because they provide the opportunity for us. Recently, I've done it for my paper with Indonesian Research Collaboration for 4 universities from Erlangga, ITB, IPB, and Gajah Mada. We submitted to one of the top journal, Journal of Organizational Behavior, and then the editor said you can resubmit if you change this, and then we resubmit it again. But if the editor says that thank you for your interest to our journal, but it seems that you don't have any opportunity to resubmit it again, and then yes, of course, I will try to find other journal. But before I submit to other journal, I need to revise based on reviewers as well as editors' comment, and it will save our time because their comments usually quite insightful, and I believe that other reviewers from other journal also will get the same comment if we do not we do not reply to their comments. I think that's my opinion. I think.
Thank you so much,
Professor Taifu?
Yeah, I completely agree. So of course, if your paper get rejected, like Professor Brady said, you have, presumably you have 2 options. First, resubmit to the same journal. Of course, usually the editor would tell you whether they are, still inviting you to redo it or not, because most of the time they know the quality of the paper beyond, or below their expectation, then they would say no. And then, but if not, then, again, based on the reviewers' comments, then you can improve your paper and resubmit. And of course, get rejected always very difficult, right? Psychologically. And then, but if you have been doing this for a while, I think you get numb, or you get used to it. So like myself, rejection for me is almost nothing anymore. I can, at the beginning, you cannot sleep if your paper or your proposal get rejected. But nowadays, I don't really care too much anymore. But of course, the problem is, well, all of us, we need to know that we need to keep our reputation, right? I mean, because scientific area or scientific world is very small, and me now, and then, maybe next month or next year, I get invited to review some paper or journal, maybe from you. You know what I mean? So people know each other very quickly. So you don't want to be perceived as an incompetent person. So that's the reason why we try hard to publish or to write paper or grant proposal the best, as best as we can. And then hopefully people realize or appreciate that and recognize that you are a good scientist. Because it's once, if they have a bad impression about you, and then you will have problem when you publish next time around, or when you submit grant proposal, right? So reputation is really important in this world. I mean, in the scientific world, because it's a small scientific world. Right, that's kind of answer for number 5. For number 6, this is a very good question, right? A lot of people complain about this, because, well, because reviewer always, always ding or always reject proposal because they say, well, it's not enough preliminary data. But then, of course, you can argue, well, to get preliminary data, I need money. If you don't give me money in the first place, how can I get preliminary data, right? So it's kind of like egg and chicken problem. But not all funding opportunity require preliminary data. So in the US, like NIH has, RO1 grant, R21, RO5, R15, or RO3. So they are different. So RO1, obviously, that's the most prestigious one. Well, if you don't have a lot of preliminary data, you won't be able to get any of that. But R21 is more like exploratory grant proposal. The smaller money. Of course, you have to start from small first if you are just, starting your program. And usually they don't require you to have preliminary data. Even some program, they prevent you, or they said you should not, or you cannot even include preliminary data if they want to have a very fresh new idea, right? And so there are different things, but most of the grant proposal, you need some kind of preliminary data to show that you already have a system working. Working, that you get some data already, and then now you need more money to continue your work. That's the reason why some university, they set aside some money to support this pilot grant. So they call it pilot grant. So a small grant, in the US, like $30,000 or $50,000, just to support you to get enough preliminary data to apply for very big grants. As Dr. Amir mentioned just now, in Australia and in the US, we have this indirect cost, or indirect cost means, for example, if you apply grants for $1 million, right? And then, well, if you need $1 million, then you have to apply. For OSU, our indirect cost is 48%. 48%. So if you need $1 million, then you have to apply for $1,480,000. So $480,000 would go to the university, and you will get $1 million to do your research. So the university is really depend on us to get those money. This is big money, almost 50% from any grant that comes to OSU will go to the university. So that's the reason why, they have money to put aside to support, scientists within the university to generate fund. Of course, it's not for free. You need to compete also. You need to put grant proposal internally to get this data. So I think, that I believe, some university in Indonesia, maybe even University Erlangga, has this internal grant that you can give to your faculty members, and then use that to develop, to get this preliminary data. That's the reason why it's nice if you stick with a certain project, all the time. So you build that capacity, you build the niche. It's not like today work with rice, and tomorrow work with, for example, wheat, or completely like chicken, or so you never have good preliminary data, because your research is completely spread here and there. And and then also relying also, well, I heard just now, relying for your student to to read literature, I think that's not very good idea though. I mean, as a principal investigator, you have to read it because you will stay in the project for very long time. Student, especially if they are doing research for their, scription or thesis, then they leave, after they finish, they leave. So you lose that institutional knowledge because they leave. So you are, as a principal investigator, need to really read, and then, and then because you have more experience, right? You have your, degree from abroad, so you can choose a better project for your student. Not student come to you and because they are not very experienced. So, and then, I think that's something we need to think about if we want to build that kind of capacity in Indonesia or in other countries.
Thank you so much, Prof. Taifu.
Right.
So I will choose some questions from the Q&A panel. So for this is, I think, the questions for Professor Badri from Harry. Please share your idea. How could we do to close the gap of facilities between what we had in UNER and abroad? In any circumstances, this is a hard situation for us to catch up with the current topic that abroad uni has been carrying out as their focus.
Thank you, Pak Heri, for your question. What is our strategy to close the gap facilities? For me, I think in the meantime, because the government budget as well as Erlangga's budget not as big as other university abroad, so we can use our allied partners who has an MOU with us. Currently, around 153 universities around the world already signed an MOU with Erlangga, and around 37 MOA. I don't know how many with pharmacy, but it seems that from 153 MOU, we can take a look on their pharmacy laboratory if you want to do some complementary collaboration. For example, like because laboratory in Erlangga maybe is not as good as our partner, and then we can ask the help from our partner. We will use your laboratory, and then let me do my part, for example, like hypothesis development or maybe theoretical development, something like that. The one that I've done with MIT also the same. In the beginning, I will say that I don't have this one, but I have this one. So I think we can collaborate fairly, and I will do my part with your standards, something like that. And in any circumstances, this is a hard situation for us to catch up. Yeah, I do agree with you that it is an ideal situation that all of the management team in university to provide the facility as good as others in abroad. But as I told you that because due to budget limitation, we can find our partners who has facility that will complement our expertise or competency. For example, like some of my friends from Sweden or maybe Denmark, Copenhagen University, say like this, Badri, if I do qualitative research in Denmark, it will be really costly. So I think you can support us with your data, and then I will do my part with theoretical and hypothesis development. Or maybe because this is a qualitative one, I will do this theoretical development. And then after that, we can discuss every 2 weeks by using Zoom to shape our paper to fit with our targeted journal. This is a good complementary approach, I think, for our collaboration. Pak Heri. So in the meantime, I think we can do like that.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Prof. Badri. I think that's like just Dr. Anir mentioned before, that is it's very important to describe the in-kind contribution for each party or each institution. And so just one more question that I would like to propose to Professor Taiful Mahmud. This is from Noviani, Dr. Noviani from Unila. Asking about that, based on your experience, what is the achievement or output research that should be fulfilled from the requirement of certain international funding agency? Because sometimes in Indonesia, the application grant must produce a commercial product that may be used in market directly as the research output.
So, well, most international grant opportunity, well, they do not really, really set it up what you have to achieve, except you have to achieve whatever you propose to do. Yeah, because you have aims, you have objectives, and of course, we'll end up publishing the result to journal and others. If you're lucky enough, your result has some kind of commercial values that you can submit grant proposal, but grant proposal is not the purpose of it, or not the target of it, right? I mean, because a lot of basic research is not immediately obvious, the application of it, but it's very important for future research. And that's why usually even NIH never really asks you to submit patent application. And whether you want or you can submit patent application, usually that is decided by the university, because submitting patent application is expensive. And then whatever you discover, the innovation or the invention, that's belong to the university, because you are part of the university. That's correct, you are the inventors, but you are not the owner of the invention. That's belong to the university. Of course, university is responsible to pay for all application, and it's expensive. They are not going to just randomly patent everything. So they have in our university, we have a special office that really take care of that kind of stuff. And they, if you think you have a good invention, then you can communicate with them, and then they will review your result, and then they will, predict whether this can lead to commercialization in a short period of time, like in 1 year term. If not, they don't bother even to submit anything. And so that's not the main goal of grant proposal. But then, of course, publication is very important. Typically, well, they every year they review your progress report. Even though you don't have any publication, that doesn't matter, because they will give you money until you finish the grant. But then, of course, next time around, when you want to apply for a next grant, then the peer review, the reviewer will catch you. And then they said, well, you received $1 million last time around, but you didn't even publish, enough, or you published only 2 or 3. So that means you are not productive. And then, so basically you set up a bad reputation about yourself moving forward, right? So that's kind of indirectly really check you whether you use the money wisely or productively before or not. So, but typically once they give you money, because it's went through the review process already, and then the scientific reviewer considered this is very meritable work to be done, and then the funding agency feel like the work that you propose is within their program, and then you get the money, right?
Okay, thank you so much. Professor Badri, do you have something to add before I moving to another questions?
I think it's enough.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I think there's one more question that I would like to read from Nasiru Salihu asking about what is the acceptable numbers of collaborators to be included in international competitive grants proposal? Professor Taifu or Professor Badri, maybe you can give a comment about this question.
Badri, Professor Badri, you want to start with that?
Yeah, about the acceptable numbers of collaborators to be included.
I think it depends on the grant that they have a guideline. For example, like for MIRA program, we can have a collaborator from Indonesia up to 4, while from MIT only 1. But one is the leader, the PI, principal investigator, and then MIT also can invite up to 4 members. So depends on the grant guideline, I think. Yeah.
Right, that's correct. I mean, but the more importantly is, whether these collaborators or those, 1 or 2 collaborators or even more really can fill the gaps of expertise that you don't have. Yeah. So, the numbers typically, well, I see some specific grant, they limit that, but in many cases, they don't limit, the number of collaborators. But the most important one, really, the most important aspect is that whatever you propose, then you have people who have expertise to do the research, right? And then, of course, to have so many collaborators also can be backfire, meaning then you have to pay so many people, because collaboration, when you put collaborators in the grant proposal, they also need a chunk of money from the grant. Otherwise, they won't be able to do anything for you if they, you don't give them money. So it's depend, how big the grant is, and how many collaborators you can afford to put in or to recruit. So more recently, we had a grant from USDA. That's about $3 million grant. So we have 6 people, 6 different labs collaborating together. So, well, with $3 million, that's pretty good. Otherwise, if you only get $500,000, then if you get 6 collaborators, and that's mean everybody only get, well, not enough money to do the research.
Thank you so much. And I think because of the time, I'm just going to read one more question that addressed to the both of the speakers. From Imam Hussein, there are 2 questions that he proposed. The first question is, in what extent the university ranking of the applicants affects the opportunity of the grants to be accepted? And the second question, if an applicant is from such a university where it's not so well ranked, then what he can do or he can do to get the international grants accepted? So probably who wants to go first?
Well, I can start first.
Okay, so, Prof. Taifu, please.
So, well, typically, university ranking, I think is really a big deal in Asia, perhaps in Indonesia and so on. In the US, we don't really talk too much about university ranking, especially international university ranking. But whether you like it or not, of course, big university that are ranked very high, they have better reputation. Honestly, like in the US, if you are talking about Harvard, right, or Yale or Princeton, they automatically people know them, and you cannot avoid the fact that many of them do very good job and they publish, like Berkeley, for example. And so when somebody from that kind of university submit grant proposal, as a human being, as a reviewer, you get really influenced by the fact that they come from uh, very big university. So to answer the question is really people don't really look at the ranking, but rather the reputation. But to some extent, the very high rank university, they have really good reputation. But beyond that, every university in the U.S., state university, they are pretty good, and you can do good job in those universities. So and then if you feel like your university is not ranked not high, another thing that you can do really to build your own reputation. So even though you are from a smaller university, but if there are many good scientists from smaller university, but they have been able to build their own reputation. So especially because the reviewer also from the same field usually, then if they know you already, and then they know that you are doing good job, and then of course the trick of it really try to collaborate with them. So if you are coming from small university, but you make connection, you collaborate with bigger players, and you publish together, automatically people look at you, oh, this guy is doing pretty good job as well. And that way then you know and then if you can get the grant, then you will be very good, because maybe you are one of the very few people from your institution that get big grant funding. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Badri, would you like to give some comments about the question?
I think it's quite similar with Professor Taifu. Last time we will conduct and then initiate the Indonesian Academy of Management, and then one of the founder actually is the top scientist in management, and then one of my colleague proposed my name, and then he searched it in the website. Usually they use LinkedIn, and then this one still undergraduate student, something like that. Because maybe my picture should be more dark people. And then he take a look on Google Scholar as well as Scopus, right? And then okay, because he's done some international research with pretty good journal. So finally he accept that I can be the founder of this association, something like that. So actually track record is quite important, I think, especially publishing in quality journal rather than quantity one, and then you publish a lot, 100. I saw one of my colleague every year 40, 60, but those are only predatory journal or maybe conference proceeding. Then people will not look at us when there is an opportunity to do research collaboration.
Yeah, thank you so much. So regardless for any university ranking, we can still build on our portfolio.
Yes,
we can still build our track record by publishing in high impact journals. Okay, so thank you so much for both of the speakers, Professor Taifu Mahmud, Professor Badri Munir Sukocho, and also Dr. Amir, who has apologized cannot join our discussion time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now reaching at the end of the webinar today, but before we are moving to formally closing this webinar, I would like to give some summary to what we have learned from today's webinar. So from Professor Taifu Mahmud, thank you so much for very nice presentations. From your presentation, we already learned about how the keys to success a winning grant applications, just like have a fundable idea, like a novel idea, have a commitment to the process, and make a time, follow the instruction and guideline, and have a good grantmanship skills. And the most important section of the proposal is just like you have mentioned a couple of times, is the first few pages, like for the writing the introduction for the research proposal, because this is like the reviewers again is an expert in the field. So a very bad introduction will stop them to read the rest of the proposal. And thank you so much for that tips. And from Dr. Amir, we also have learned about know the granting bodies is very important, following the instruction, and then find local collaborator is also important. And particularly knowing the budget when we are applying for some international grant application. And from Professor Badri, we also know about the impact of the international collaborations, and publishing in high-ranking journal is also very important to give the impact to the university. And design and develop research for mid or long term is also very important. And the most important part is also find a suitable partners that Professor Badri is already shown to us, like contact your lab mates, contact your classmate previously, or contact your former advisor is also a good opportunities for us to having a collaborators internationally. So once again, thank you so much to both for the speakers, and thank you so much for all the participants who has been joining us since 8 o'clock in the morning. And I believe it's in 8 in the evening, Professor Taifu in
9
US.
PM.
Oh, it's almost 9, all right. Okay, we have some announcements before we are getting to formally close this webinar. Some announcement from the organizing committee that we'd like to give to the participants. Okay, so just give a second. So we would like to give a certificate of appreciation. This is an electronic certificate of appreciation to the first speakers, Professor Taifu Mahmud from the Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Airlangga, Professor Junaidi Khotin. Thank you so much, Prof. Taifu. The next certificate of appreciation we would like to give to Dr. Amir Ali Papet from the Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy, that he apologized for not being able to join the discussions. And for the third speakers, thank you so much, Professor Badri. This certificate of appreciation we like to give you to contribute as the speaker for today's webinar. Thank you so much. And then next, I would like to give some announcements before we formally close the webinar. Just a few of reminder to participants. All participants is entitled to an e-certificate of participation after completing the requirements below. Participants need to fill out the attendance list at the following link, not later than 11 a.m. And then participants attended the webinar series through YouTube or Zoom as well. They can fill out the post test at the following link. And these links as well will be available as well at the chat and the live chat of YouTube. The post test and evaluation links will be available until today at 1 p.m. And then the certificate of participation will be sent via email within 10 days. That is including weekend and holiday. Each participant only has one chance to access the post test link. Those participants is asked to fill out the data correctly. And once again, there's an announcement. So this webinar is also part of the webinar series for the Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Airlangga. And then the next webinar event is tomorrow, 10 of October. We will talking about meningkatkan imunitas pada masa pandemik. So those who haven't registered to this webinar, you can do the registration by today. And we also have the next international conference that will be held on the October 15, 2020. So if you have a paper that you like to present as a poster presentation, please feel free to join us and then do the registration link to the link provided on the flyer. Okay, thank you so much once again, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we already at the end of the webinar today. I'm very grateful to have the speakers here. Thank you so much. Please stay healthy and safe, Professor Taiful Mahmud, Professor Badri. And thank you so much, Dr. Dewi, for attending this webinar, and as well as the organizing committee who arranged the webinar today. Thank you so much for the participants from Indonesia, Nigeria, and any other countries. I'll see you in the next events from Faculty of Pharmacy, Universitas Erlangga. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.